It has been just over a year since the crash happened on my 240, October 10th, 2021. And it's pretty exciting to see how far we've gotten on the car. And it's really exciting that we're at the fun stage now where we get to fabricate the engine bay and really make this car unique once again. But since I drove my girlfriend's 240 today, I figured I'd show you guys how we made her engine bay. So with her bay, we went with more of a simplistic tub style, more of like an OEM Plus vibe. And you can see we even have the fuse box mounted in the stock locations, which was the whole goal with doing tubs in her bay. When my girlfriend first picked up this car, it had front end damage, so the whole front end was a little bit crunched in. It wasn't horrible, but I figured while I'm in here fixing the core support, I might as well do tubs and just clean up the rest of the bay. So yeah, it's definitely not done yet, but I think that's a pretty good start. It's painted midnight purple, which is off of an R34 Skyline, and it looks super cool. I'm sorry it's not sunny right now, so you guys can't really see it sparkling, but yeah, it's pretty cool. But anyways, this video would be part 2 of 2 of how to make tubs. I hope this video will inspire you guys to think outside the box for your own engine bays. But alright, where did we leave off? The last thing we did was we had the engine in the car with the radiator and the intercooler piping all attached. And then we took measurements of everything so that we knew our clearances for where to put the tubs. And then we pulled the engine back out, and that is where we're at today. So now I'm going to grind off all the paint that's on the shock towers or any of the areas that I'm going to be welding the tubs to. And it's important to note that I did already take measurements of all of the lines and everything, because obviously when I grind this off, I'm not going to be able to see that line anymore. And again, I've matched that shock tower's measurements to this shock tower, and I've trimmed this tub and test fitted it. Verified, looks good. Alright, so I've probably spent about half an hour grinding away most of the paint that's going to be in our way. I even got some of the sections under the car, some of the shock tower, some of this outer wall here. And I'm wearing a whole bunch of adhesive, or as I like to call it, pookie. Now we can start lining up the tubs. I still need to trim this side, like I did that side. So maybe I'll do that first. So this top line here is not a cut line, this is just the overlapping line. But I do want to remove probably about an inch or so under that line. Probably all of this we'll take out. And while I'm at it on this side, I'm also going to remove this pinch weld right here, like we did on that side. And since we have this prepped, I am going to tack weld each tub into the engine bay based on the measurements that I took. Because once we have those tacked in, we can build everything else around it. And as you guys know, we're going to use the curved side for the inner portions, but the outer portions have this lip on it. We don't need that lip, and it's going to be just one more thing to rub on if we leave it there. So I'm going to carefully cut along this seam here. Then I'm going to grind away all of this galvanized greasy steel stuff away that I'm going to be welding on, because if you don't, you'll get really bad welds. And just like that, we have the first tub set in place. Man, it really starts coming together when these are in the bay, I swear. It makes it look so much better in my opinion. And I only put 1, 2, 3, 4 tacks on it. We're not fully welding it in right now, although that is where we're gonna leave it. There's still more we have to do before I fully weld that in. But now we're gonna tack weld this side in. And now we have both tubs tacked into position, and this looks super sick. So now what I want to do before I fully weld this in, because as you can see there's still play here, is start making this inner panel here and then also this panel here. And this was kind of sloppy from the previous owner of this core support. As you remember, it was all bashed up or whatever. So I might end up cutting this out and welding a new flat piece in here just so I can box this in really nicely. Because this is kind of like, you know, really beat up, and yeah, it's not too pretty. I think this side is a lot nicer. I might end up keeping this side. Yeah, see, this is nice and straight. And this will be identical to this one. So you only have to make one plate and then you can outline it and make it into two. Hopefully I have enough metal for that. So now we're gonna turn this cardboard box into a template for this. So we've got our big pizza slice cut out. Now let's test fit it, see how it looks. Looks pretty good. Now this is gonna run a little big, and that's on purpose because I can always trim away more once I cut out the metal sheet. But now let's test it on the other side. And this is the same piece, I only have one of these. Perfect. As you can see, I'm pushing it in on this inner edge here. This would be a really nice seam to weld, and we'll weld it on this side as well. And then you can see right here, this is a little triangle that we're gonna have to fill in. So this is where the tub is gonna end. So we'll fill that in, and this is exactly where the intercooler pipe is gonna be. But we're gonna remake this because this is all crunched and nasty looking. Same with this. It's cool to see all the lines lining up. We can now visualize the next steps. So let's get this cardboard piece turned into metal. All right, let's see how these things fit on here. Man, I gotta say, I got this curve pretty dang good. Especially for just using like a regular grinder. Not bad, not too bad. Oh yeah, that looks pretty dang good. Now obviously it's just sitting in place right now, so this gap will be closed when it's pushed in and tacked into position. But just looking at it like that, we got that pretty good. And then again, you can see the triangle that we'll have to make later. And I made the identical cut on this one. And I have not test fitted this side, so hopefully this side fits. Oh yeah. That's looking good. So let's get to welding. Oh man, it had a really good bead going all the way down, and then I had a blowout right at the bottom. But man, it looks super good. Woo! Same with the top, got a nice one there. Man, that's looking super cool. But I need to do this side now. Woo! So the next thing I'm gonna wanna do, since I have the tubs completely welded into position, is start looking at the bottom here. I have welded a little bit on the inside here. I don't know if I'm going to completely fill that in because it will show up on the other side, as you can see here. But I think I might, just to keep water and moisture out of there. So I'm going to fill it in with some weld through primer, just in this little crease all along here. And then, as you can see, this is why I left a little lip before on the shock tower. Now we can trim it back. And the upper tub placement was strategically placed so that it would catch this thicker piece here, which is the entire top hat of the shock tower. This is probably one of the thickest metals on the car. This and the A-pillar, definitely the thickest metals. But it works kind of interesting sometimes because if you have really good heat, you'll burn through this first layer here and you'll actually end up welding to the shock tower itself, all within here. So that's definitely reinforced and much stronger than factory. Now this is nicely trimmed, so we can weld this seam here. And I'm also going to weld on the bottom of this as well. And while we're under here, I'm going to weld the seam here from that pinch weld that we cut off. Sweet. Not only did I do that side, but I also knocked this side out. And man, it turned out so good. Basically, this is all nice and flat in here now. Seam along the bottom, seam along the top, and then also seamed in the inside of the tub. Have a couple stitch welds on the shock tower. But yeah, it looks pretty good. Well, I'd say this looks much better than having this pinch weld hang down here. That's a lot of added wheel clearance. All right, glad that's done. Now we can start moving on to filling these corners in here. And also working on this triangle down here. I'm actually gonna start doing the triangles. So we're gonna grab a nice piece of cardboard. And you already know, we're gonna outline the spot that we need on here. For this, it might be easier to put under the car, like this, and give it a nice outline. So now we're just turning cardboard into metal. Hey. So obviously there's a straight side and then the side that we cut. The straight side we're putting towards the frame rail. Perfect. Obviously I'll have to cut off the tip of this triangle, but it's gonna fit in here perfectly. And before I weld it in here, I'm gonna have to clean up all these edges because they're not really even. And this is the ultimate test to see if you got your measurements right for both tubs. Perfect. And again, I'm gonna have to cut off the tip, but look at that. I even got this side done while I was at it. Woo. Let's start making those top corner pieces so we can fill in the rest of the tub area. Then we can start working up front. Look at those holes, man. What the heck? Oh, magic. All I basically did was curve a piece of metal from the inside, hold it, weld it from the top, fill it in, grind it flush, and that looks pretty dang good for about 10 minutes of work. The tedious stuff, I think, is done, although I don't really enjoy doing the sides, but I think we need to start knocking this part out. And this is the part where you really want to be careful with the measurements that you took of your intercooler piping. Because the last thing you want is to put all your hard work into this and it doesn't fit. Blah, 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 let's get to work. We're gonna make something that looks a little bit nicer than this. So matching this curve, you'd think you'd have to cut out another round piece, but if you remember, we had to cut out this inner piece off of a sheet of metal, which is right here. So we still have the opposite side of that curve. So all we have to do is line this up to this curve, draw a little line of where we want to cut it, and then we have the exact template that we need. It's kind of nice that you end up using both sides of this. Saves you a lot of time, that's for sure. Oh man. Okay, okay. Let's see how that looks from the inside. Oh yeah. That looks so clean. I guess we'll weld that into position. That looks sick. Oh my gosh, so crispy. This just looks so nice. Man, that's making me want to do the other side now to match. Yeah. What do you think? Should we do it? Should we match this side? All right, fine, we'll do it. But first, sushi. So I basically just cut it along this seam here, hammered this piece in ever so slightly, just to mate up with the edge of the tub. As you can see, it looks pretty good. So while I'm in here, I'm gonna cut out all of this bent stuff as well. Because remember, I got this core support off of a car that had a mid-mount, it looks like. Because I think you have to cut this part out for the mid-mount. And it's just all boofed all over the place, but all I was worried about is having this whole top piece straight, because I already knew I was going to remake the bottom and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So, but yeah, guess we'll keep grinding away and install this next side. And there it is. Woo! I know I'm making a lot of quick cuts in this video, but I feel like something like this is kind of self-explanatory. Just measuring and shaping out what you're welding onto the car and cleaning up the edges real nice. Just trying to make the video flow a little better. But as we continue on, we're going to start making a platform, finally, on both sides. And I've kind of marked on the tub area my measurements that I took. That way I know the dimensions to clear the intercooler pipes. So I'll be sure to keep these in mind when I'm measuring out the platform. But I also want to box in this area or do something just to make it look nicer. Because with it being so open like this, I don't really like that. So let's see what we can come up with. That's the fun part. You can just do whatever you want. It's just like Legos. The possibilities are endless. As long as you have metal, a grinder, and a welder. And I also wanted to note, if you have an S chassis and you're thinking about doing tubs, and you're thinking about cutting off the side piece like this, the same way I did mine on both sides, don't forget about your wiring harness if you still have it. This is the piece that came off of here. I think this looks much better. So I don't run an engine bay harness. I've actually wired up my own harness to run, and there's only a few wires that actually go into the engine bay. And when I put the car back together, I'll show you guys what it looks like. It looks super clean, super nice. Because there's nothing cooler than popping the hood and then no wires. No BS, just so clean. That's what I like. And that's what we're going after. So now we have our cardboard measured out. Got the left side done, the right side done. Now the moment of truth, test fit. Let's see how it looks. Oh yeah, that's gonna be so cool. I left all of this open because obviously we have the intercooler pipe around here. And then I wanna make some kind of ducting right here for the intake filter. So we're gonna get to that later. But for now, this side's ready to be welded on. And the right side. Honestly, I'm super hyped on how these curves came out, especially if we're using just a grinder and a flappy disc. That's pretty good. That's like exactly what I wanted it to look like. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but you get the idea. That looks super good. Oh yeah, that's looking sick. Oh yeah. What do you guys think? Do you dig it? Would you have done it differently? It made the right side swirl down. It's a pretty cool effect. I've never made something like that in an engine bay before, but there it is. It looks pretty neat. And this side, obviously I cut out extra. And then on this side, I also added this little curved piece here that continues down to the bottom. So at this point with the tubs, we just kind of have to hope that we got our measurements correct. That way the intercooler pipes fit with no issues. If not, then we'll have to go from there, either adjust the intercooler pipe or trim more away. But if your bay is already painted, the last thing you want to do is start chopping it up even more, because then you have to reseal it, recoat it, re-clear it. It's a whole process. You don't want to have to do that. This is awesome. I'm honestly more hyped on the bay this time around than my first time doing my engine bay. And I have to admit, I really did love my first engine bay, but I don't know, something about this just hits different. Like, this is so cool. I appreciate you guys for sticking around today and hanging out with me. Hopefully you can use some of the methods I've used in this video on your own builds, or maybe it'll inspire you to do something different in your engine bay. I don't know. But either way, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you guys next time. So here's the 240, and there's the Integra I was just looking at. It's right next to each other.